Ever wonder what you're really made of? I mean, at the most fundamental level? Well, it turns out everything alive, from you to me to the smallest microbe, is built from the same tiny toolkit. Today, we're going on a journey zooming way, way in to find the microscopic nuts and bolts that make life tick. We're going to build it from the ground up. So let's ask that question again. What are you really made of? Seriously, if you could shrink down, past your skin, past your tissues, and dive right inside one of your own cells, what would you actually find? The answer is both way simpler than you'd think and, at the same time, incredibly elegant. Because believe it or not, every living thing on this planet is constructed from just 4 main classes of large biological molecules. That's it, just 4. It's this amazing story of how life takes a very simple, shared toolkit and builds breathtaking complexity. All right, let's get into it. Part 1. Life's 4 essential ingredients. You gotta know these, because they are the foundational materials for absolutely everything we're about to build. And here they are, the big 4. First up, you've got carbohydrates. Think fuel and structure. Then you have lipids, which are amazing for storing energy and building membranes. Then we have proteins. Oh man, proteins are the superstars, the workhorses that do pretty much everything. And finally, nucleic acids. This is your hard drive, the molecules that store and transfer all your precious genetic information. Now, life uses this one simple but incredibly powerful principle to build almost everything. It's the idea of a polymer. The best way to think about it? Legos. A polymer is just a long chain, and it's made by linking together lots of smaller, repeating units called monomers. So life takes a handful of these monomer bricks and snaps them together to build an almost infinite variety of huge structures. And get this, the chemistry for building them and breaking them apart is universal across all of life. To build a longer polymer chain, cells use what's called a dehydration reaction. They literally just pop out a water molecule to form a new bond. To break a chain down, they do the exact opposite. It's called hydrolysis. They add a water molecule back in to break a bond. It's this beautifully efficient system for construction and deconstruction. Okay, so we've got our building blocks, but how does a cell actually use them to, do stuff? Well, it all comes down to 2 of the most critical players in our molecular cast, the molecules that hold the plans and the molecules that do all the heavy lifting. The proteins, they are the ultimate workforce, and their secret, the thing that lets them do all their amazing jobs, is their intricate 3D shape. It all starts with the primary structure, which is just the unique sequence of amino acids in a chain. But it doesn't stay a chain. It starts to coil up and fold into secondary structures, and then the whole thing scrunches up into a final, complex tertiary structure. For many proteins, that's the final shape. Sometimes you get a few of these chains teaming up, which we call the quaternary structure. But here's the line you have to remember. Structure determines function. The shape is everything. And if you ever doubt how important that exact structure is, just look at hemoglobin. This is the protein that carries oxygen in your blood. In sickle cell disease, there is a single mistake, just one wrong amino acid in that long primary chain. And that one tiny error causes the entire protein to fold incorrectly. This forces the red blood cells into that crescent or sickle shape, and they can't carry oxygen properly. It's a powerful and devastating example of how a single molecular typo can change everything. So where do the instructions for getting that protein sequence right even come from? That brings us to the blueprint and what's known as the central dogma of biology. Think of it like this. The master plan, the permanent blueprint, is stored safely in your DNA. To build a specific protein, the cell makes a temporary working copy of that plan in the form of RNA. That RNA message is then sent out to the factory floor and is translated to build the actual protein. DNA to RNA to protein. That is the information highway inside every living cell. Okay, so we've got our materials, we've got our blueprints, and we've got our protein workers. Let's zoom back out a little and see how all of these parts are organized into the basic functioning unit of life, the cell. And honestly, the best way to wrap your head around it is to imagine the cell as a busy, microscopic city. Now, in nature, there are basically 2 different city plans. First, you have prokaryotic cells, like bacteria. They're kind of like a simple studio apartment. The DNA just floats around in one open plan space. But then you have eukaryotic cells. That's what we're made of, and plants and animals too. These are way more complex, like a mansion full of specialized rooms or organelles. And crucially, their DNA is kept safe inside a central headquarters called the nucleus. And this nucleus is absolutely the command center. It's City Hall. It protects the cell's master blueprints, all that DNA, and from in there, it issues all the orders. It's controlling what gets built, when it gets built, and how much of it to make. So, following those orders from City Hall, we head to the city's industrial zone. The ribosomes are the actual workers on the factory floor, assembling the proteins based on the RNA instructions, and they often work right on the surface of the endoplasmic reticulum, or the ER, which is this huge network of membranes that helps process and ship out all the new products. After leaving the ER factory, many of those products arrive at the Golgi apparatus. Think of this as the city's main post office or shipping center. In here, proteins get modified, sorted, and packed up into little bubbles called vesicles, which are basically molecular delivery trucks, ready to be sent to their correct final destinations. Of course, no city can run without power. And for the cell, that's the job of the mitochondria. These are the power plants. Through a process called cellular respiration, they take fuel, like sugar, and convert it into ATP. That's the high-energy molecule that powers every single thing happening in our little cellular city. Now, every good city needs a border, right? Something to control what comes in and what goes out. For the cell, this is the plasma membrane. And let me tell you, it's so much more than just a simple wall. It is a dynamic, intelligent gatekeeper. We describe it using the fluid mosaic model. Mosaic because it's this patchwork of different protein molecules just kind of bobbing around in a double layer of lipids, and fluid because these parts aren't locked into place. They're constantly shifting and moving around. It's a flexible, living barrier. But its most critical property is this. It's selectively permeable. What that means is it acts like a bouncer at a club. It's very picky. It lets some molecules pass right through, but blocks others entirely. This precise control is what allows the cell to maintain a stable internal environment that's completely different from the world outside. So the easiest way for something to get into the city is through passive transport. This is when a substance just naturally flows from an area where there's a lot of it to an area where there's less of it. It's just moving down its concentration gradient. It's like coasting downhill on a bicycle. It requires absolutely zero energy from the cell. But sometimes a cell needs to move something against its natural flow. It needs to move something from low concentration to high. This is like trying to pump water uphill, and it definitely requires energy. We call this active transport, and the cell has to spend its precious ATP to power special protein pumps that get the job done. And a fantastic, crucial example of active transport is the sodium-potassium pump. This is essential for our nerve cells to work. It uses energy from ATP to actively force sodium ions out of the cell while pulling potassium ions in. It's working against the grain to create this powerful electrical gradient, kind of like charging a battery, that our nerves then use to send signals. So let's just step back and think about what we've seen. We went from just 4 types of molecules built into polymers, folded into proteins, and then organized into this complex, bustling cellular city, complete with a command center, factories, and a smart border. It's this incredible system where simple parts come together to create something wonderfully, beautifully complex. It really makes you wonder, what does this elegant architecture, built from the ground up, really tell us about the fundamental nature of life itself?